the savings at JCPenney's 4th of July sale now through Sunday. Get up to 50% off select furniture, mattresses, and window coverings during our home sale. Plus, save on hundreds of doorbusters across the store for the entire family. Save even more on select styles with an extra 25% off coupon. Celebrate every summer moment with JCPenney. Offers and coupon valid through 7/4. Doorbusters valid 7/1 through 7/4. Some exclusions apply. Furniture, mattresses, and window coverings limited to 10% off coupon. See store or jcp.com for details.
Want to look 10 years younger? We recommend Short North Dental for your whitening and brightening needs because nothing is sexier than a man with a great smile. Check out the newest gallery in the Arts District at shortnorthdental.com because dentistry has never looked this good.
The following is brought to you by the Social Suplex Podcast Network.
This is John Silver, lead recruiter of The Dark Order, and you are listening to All Things Elite.
Welcome to the 111th episode of Social Suplex's podcast about AEW with the proclivity for positivity. Welcome to All Things Elite. My name is Austin Sumwoods, and I am the host of this lovely show. Joining with me, as always, is my good buddy, my good friend, my good pal, Floyd Johnson Jr. My good man, how you doing?
I am doing well. I just celebrated the birthday of one half of the greatest tag team ever. And we'll talk about the rest later. But go ahead.
Exactly.
Yeah,
there was one big birthday, too, we'll be talking about as well. But we are not just us two for today's episode. We are joined by a friend of the show. He is a co-host of the Trick or Treat podcast. He is JR Perez. JR, how you doing, man?
I'm doing wonderful, Austin. Here we are today as we're recording July 1st. We just got through the first 6 months of 2020, and I was talking with Floyd. I said, hey, please let me get on the podcast and talk to Austin and you because I just want to talk about an amazing episode of what we've seen with AEW, especially everything that occurred last night. So thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, Austin and Floyd.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I cracked up because he's like, well, I'll say I recorded. He'd say, you didn't invite me on the show. And I'm like, well, the default show is me and Austin, so unless I think about it, I don't invite anyone on the show. And then I was like, well, you want to be on the show this week? And he's like, no, I'll just wait till next week. And then we're on the phone talking before the show, and he's like, hey, can I be on the show today? I'm like, hey, dude, yes. You're hurting my head.
You don't gotta knock. Come in the door, and then we'll just start going. That's all we gotta. All you gotta do.
Yeah, what? 2 people talking stuff about wrestling, 3 people talking stuff. I'm down. Let's go. Let's do it.
Absolutely.
Let's do it.
And we got a lot to talk about with AEW recently. Because yes, first appearance for JR in 2021, and we have ourselves a big show to talk about with AEW Dynamite, the last show at Daly's Place for the time being until they have their homecoming show in August. But they had a nice little send-off for Daly's Place as AEW Wrestling returns to touring, and we get to see them going back on the road. We got a lot to talk about with that, but before we get into the whole spiel of the show, we got to make sure you guys are downloading this fine show on Google or Apple Podcasts. And if you listen to us on Spotify or wherever you listen to us, any podcasting platform it is, a share is always appreciated with your friends, coworkers, family, whoever you wish. It means the world. You can also leave a rating and a review. Let us know how we're doing. If you're so inclined, you can also leave a donation through our podcast provider, Red Circle. That would be incredibly generous, but the easiest way to support us is on social media. Follow us at AT Elite Pod on Twitter. At Social Suplex is our podcasting network family. Be sure to follow them and check out all their other shows. I am at SZoomer4 on Twitter. Floyd is at Floyd Johnson Jr. on Twitter. And JR, where can people find you and your podcast?
Yes, so you can find me on Twitter at Lucha Professor. Lucha obviously is Spanish for wrestling, and I am actually a legitimate professor in higher education, so it's at Lucha Professor on Twitter. And then our podcast, it's the Trick or Treaters podcast. You can find us on Twitter at Trick or Treat Pod. That's at Trick or Treat Pod. You can find our Linktree. We're part of the Slash and Cast Network. And you can find us on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts. We drop our episodes every Friday. So as we're recording Thursday, July 1st, on Friday, July 2nd, we'll drop I Know What You Did Last Summer, the movie review for 4th of July weekend.
All right.
And before we get started, I'd just like to send a big fuck you to WWE's top 50 tag teams list.
I knew it. I knew he couldn't resist himself. I knew it.
They did not have the greatest tag team in the history of their company. The Revival on that list. So I'd just like to say to anyone that had anything to do with that list, even if you were just doing the video editing and you had no idea what you were editing, fuck you. Thanks.
Yeah. Shout out to the New Day for getting the rub. You're technically a faction, not a tag team. Shout out to getting the rub for getting that nod. But I mean, that list was, I don't know.
The Usos, the only tag team that their whole career has been a tag team, was not in the top 5. Everybody else had a singles run. Like the
New Day's best rivalries were against the Usos.
Exactly. Oh my God. I mean, I know definitely AEW podcast. I'm not going to spend long on it, but it literally, I swore. I was telling them, I was telling both of my co-hosts today that that they were on the list. They had to be in the 30s or something. I just don't remember. They weren't on the list. The only reason they were on the show is because they had them getting beat by DIY.
Yeah, I mean, it's a list, so we can make fun of it because it's just a list. But yeah, that's really what we're going to leave it at that with. But we can get into the big news of the week. Like Floyd said, we have to wish a happy birthday to one Dax Harwood of one of the greatest tag teams out there in pro wrestling, FTR. But also, Floyd, you got to give your boy Cody some flowers. It was his birthday.
Happy 36th birthday. 36th birthday to the man, the myth, the legend, the American Nightmare, the Prince of Pro Wrestling. For one day, he was also the American Dream, the ender of racism, civil rights icon, Cody Rhodes.
I just love that you threw that in there, too. Yes, a big happy birthday to Cody, for sure.
Yeah, anytime someone brings up racism, I'm like, it doesn't exist. Cody ended it. He done.
Did you see that?
One promo, gone.
Let's look.
One promo, gone. End of racism, civil rights icon. Name all your black children Cody, because he's that great. But no, he had his 30th birthday, and like he has a baby that's like a few weeks old. He just had his 30th birthday. Where was he last night at the end of the show? At work, out there taking pictures, signing autographs with everybody around around the floor to thank Jacksonville for being such a gracious host for the last year. And I do want to say that as someone that travels to events, as someone a very hardcore AEW fan, I do want to say that I thank the city of Jacksonville, and I want to thank all the people like Ryan and Annie, the people that go to like every show every week. I tip my hat to you, because even if I lived in Jacksonville, I don't know if I would have been able to make that happen. Like every show they go to, Ryan and Annie go to every show, and I don't know. I definitely wouldn't be able to make that happen. So, as a person that's been to all the pay-per-views, it'd just be like you got to work some days and you can't take vacations. And they're there, and generally the core audience is really loud. And when they're there, and it's fun, and they're welcoming when you go visit. So just shout out to Jacksonville for holding it down. I know there's this thing called burning out the territory, and I know they burned the shit out of y'all, but y'all held it down. I mean, y'all did what you could. I remember back in the day when I used to go to the Asylum in Nashville, and it'd just be like, people there, same people every week. And it was just like they had their family, and Jacksonville had that for a year. And so I definitely thank all of you for holding it down.
It definitely shows too, just with like stuff like that, like when ECW would be doing shows specifically in the ECW arena, and NXT at the Performance Center and at Full Sail Arena. They like fans there, they were hardcore fans that would go every single show, and probably sit in the same seats if they could, because it became tradition for them. So shout out to Jacksonville to be one of those towns that became that for a wrestling company, because I think that's held up to high regard in terms of wrestling fandom, of just when a company makes a city its home and how that city responds to that company coming in, and if they embrace it, they lift it up, they try to add to the show being there. It was truly spectacular. These last few shows that they've had in Jacksonville have had great crowd responses ever since they had Double or Nothing with the crowd back in full effect. It was great, and it's been so much fun to watch. But yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun to see the show back on the road and in front of new audiences and new cities.
And speaking of the birthday boy, Cody, and I'll let JR chime in just a second, he is on the newest edition of Inside the Ropes magazine. You can go to InsideTheRopes.com and order it. It's a UK magazine, so you got to do the conversion rate. But Cody's on it, so it's worth it. Send it to yourself. Buy it for yourself. Buy it for me. Even though I am already buying me one, I'll take another one. All right, JR, yes. What do you have to say about Cody's birthday?
One of the things I wanted to throw this out there because I have a kind of a similar situation as well. Cody is a very polarizing wrestler, and we've been on the show before and I talked about it. It's just that he gets heat just because he's Cody Rhodes. But yesterday, I believe it was on Instagram, Amanda Hewer, the widow of Brody Lee, put out this message about really just how good of a person Cody is as a human being. Forget all the stuff that happens in the ring, happens to AEW. Just how he's been there for Brody Lee Jr., been there for the family, everything he did when, from the time the late Brody Lee passed away till this very second with her family. And man, that's just, seeing that. And I've had similar situations where I've helped students who've lost, who don't have parents and they really need somebody to kind of look out for them. Currently, I have somebody who's about ready to attend college, lost their parents when they were really young. And that was the whole thing, was trying to look out for them for the last decade to get to this point of when they're able to get into college and look out for them to help them in the next part of their life. And to be that mentor, it is difficult, but not as difficult of by far as a young child losing a parent. And that's hard to see from an outside perspective, let alone, being a child. And for Cody to be able to do that for a family, to me, that's just amazing. It shows what type of person he is. And, I just show Cody some love for his birthday because, like I said, he gets so much heat just because of the fact that he's Cody Rhodes. And, a lot of it's not deserved. And I hope he had a good one. It's crazy to think that he's only, when I see him, that he's only 30, to me, he's only 36. Some people are I can't believe he's 36. No, he's only 36. And we don't know how much longer, because he said that, he wants to retire by the time he's 40?
Yep, that's the age.
So enjoy him while he's here.
Yeah, we'll see. But also, shout out, like Floyd said, that Inside the Ropes cover. Shout out to my boys, Kenny McIntosh, Sandra, and David of Inside the Ropes. Y'all my guys. But regardless, we can get into the AEW Dynamite review back on Wednesday nights. And for the last time, at least until the Homecoming show, last time at Daly's Place, we opened up with the World Tag Team Eliminator match between the AEW World Tag Team Champions, the Young Bucks, versus Mad King Eddie Kingston and Penta El Zero Miedo. If Penta and Eddie won this match, they would get a future title shot against the AEW Tag Team Champions down the road. And my God, we gotta talk, I guess, about what the hell the Elite decided to do with their fucking facial hair. It was so distracting. They were just like trying to absorb all this heat with how they just carry themselves and how they've portrayed themselves, that they've just decided to go and just take Dax. Well, Nick at least took Dax Harwood's facial hair and just was like, it's mine now and I'm going to use it. Even though it doesn't look good, I'm going to use it. And like Kenny had fucking mutton chops pretty much, and fucking Matt had a ridiculous mustache. Fucking I'm swearing over it so much because it was ridiculous. Even Nakazawa had a mustache. I was just like, what on earth are these people doing? Regardless of that, this opening match was very strong. It had a couple of slippy spots, I think. Nothing too, like, crazy. Like, it's obvious that these guys, they've wrestled each other a bunch, and they're so used to wrestling each other that it basically comes naturally to them. There was a couple spots that were a little off, but it didn't take away from the match necessarily. Specifically, how you could very well clearly see at one point that Rick Knox's hand went hit the canvas for a 3 count, and the fans very much heard it and saw it and called them out for it, even though he still said it was a 2 count. That was the big moment, and probably despite the fact that like the Young Bucks used it to try to create more heat, it was very much a botch, but it still didn't really take too much away from the match. Very strong performance by Eddie Kingston and Penta, being able to get the win thanks to the good man Frankie Kazarian, the Elite Hunter, coming out and just beating the hell out of the Good Brothers, and they were able to get the win because of him and just being able to keep the Good Brothers at bay. And it was really cool to see because, I mean, like, it was like the first time in at least a good bit that we've seen the Young Bucks take a loss. And it's good to go to guys like Eddie, who's super over, and everyone's fans of Penta and how he carries himself. I'm very intrigued to see what a title match between them would be like and when exactly we're going to get that. Regardless, this was a pretty strong opener, though, I think. But I'll go to JR first. Thoughts on this opening tag match?
You know, I thought it was good. I will say the one thing is, I don't know why Nick Jackson's looking like Joe Exotic.
Yep.
And, you know, Matt's little kid from Napoleon Dynamite pencil mustache was, you know, okay, but man, it was bad. But, you know, I love me some Penta El Sour M. I say time and time again that I scream into the heavens that I think he's grossly been underutilized for over a year and a half now. And I really want to see him in some sort of title picture. At the same time, it's also tough because I'm not a fan of put together tag teams. And, you know, we know next week they're going to get a title shot, Eddie Kingston and Penta El Zero M. So part of me wants to see them win so Penta can become the AEW tag team champion. But then at the same time, it's like they're put together tag team. So I did enjoy the match that I thought was good. And but yeah, I'll leave it at that because I'm just not a fan of the Young Bucks. I think this whole thing they're doing is very corny, and I know it's like they're doing it just to get, you know, heat, but I'm just not a fan of it. But I'd love for them to lose the titles and move on to somebody else.
All right, so I had this I found an interesting take. I don't know if anybody else did. It did not catch on Twitter. But, Austin, are you a fan of the Star Trek?
I'm
Do you dabble?
Of it. I have not. I've dabbled in a couple episodes, but I've not been. gotten heavily into it, at least.
Well, the one thing I know about Star Trek, and I learned it from The Big Bang Theory, is when they would ever do evil twin or doppelganger episodes, how would you tell the good guy from the bad guy? Do you remember that? Do you know that answer?
I don't believe I do.
All right. They would have a black beard. So it would be Leonard Nimoy. Normally, Leonard Nimoy is Spock, facial clear, but the bad Spock had a black beard. He had a black mustache and beard. That was how you knew he was the bad Spock. And I know Cody's a huge Star Trek fan, right? So, know that personally because he does a new podcast about everything but wrestling or whatever. And so I was like, because they all did it. All the bad guys in their group all got the dark facial hair. I was like, is this a nod to Star Trek? And no, of course, no one else would see that because, intimate knowledge of, Cody. And I've also been I watch Big Bang Theory every day. So it was fresh on my mind. But I was like, I wonder if that's a nod to that. The bad guy mustaches, the bad guy beards. So I just thought that was cool. The Young Bucks also set it up the day before on their social media by saying Matt is a natural dirty blonde, but if you didn't know, he could grow out all black beard. He said that. It was funny because they did it and then they set it up for the show. It was great. The match was, AEW first match greatness. I am not a big fan of the put together tag teams, but in this particular case, you at least use some logic to bring these two together, as in they used to be best friends, and they both hate the Bucks, and their other their partners are all injured. That's why they're teaming up together. That at least makes sense to me. And you have probably the second and third best tag teams in the company, Proud and Powerful and FTR, in somewhat of a rivalry together. So and then the Young Bucks have kind of beat everybody else. If you look at the tag team list, they beat everybody else. So you pretty much need a tag team to get them to the next tag team. And in serving in that purpose, I think Eddie Kingston and Pentagon worked to serve that purpose. Like I said, we all know Rey Fenix is hurt. We know, I don't know about Pac. I don't think he's actually hurt. I just think he's just kind of ridden off for right now. And we know Moxley is, home with the baby, I guess, for a little bit. And so he's written off for his injury. So it does work. The Young Bucks need just a win. They need a team to win to move on to the next spot. Unfortunately, that is wrestling. Sometimes you already know who's going to win and you just deal with it. But I thought the match was good. I thought the chemistry was good. I think how the Bucks work versus how Eddie Kingston works, there's very much a contrast to that. Because the Bucks are professional wrestlers, spot monkey, super kicks, all that other stuff. Anything anyone else says, I don't even know. They have a very athletic style. And that is more in line with how a face would work. Eddie Kingston is straightforward punches, backhands, hard suplexes. Very much the opposite of what the Young Bucks do. So when you get those interactions between the Young Bucks and Eddie Kingston, you very much get that different contrast that makes you want to watch it. And then, of course, their chemistry with Pentagon is amazing. Two of the best tag team matches I ever saw in my life at Double or Nothing and All Out, respectively. They're just good.
Yeah, and I would say too, another reason why they probably threw this tag team together is that they needed to capitalize on how over Eddie Kingston was some way, and I guess they just didn't have any like solo feuds for him in mind, so they just kind of remembered, oh yeah, him and Penta had stuff to do, and they still wanted to make sure they used Penta because Penta says is super over, and Penta himself is just crazy over too. So I think it makes sense why they're doing it, even though we would have preferred like either Lucha Bros or Eddie, like another team. Like I would have thought, like if it wasn't for the fact that Jungle Boy is going crazy ham on his singles career, like Jurassic Express going after the Young Bucks would be a cool little thing. And I think there's a point where they could probably come back and try to go after that too, depending on how Jungle Boy's singles run continues to go. But yeah, as much as I understand if people don't like it, I get it. And like, I think it's more so just if it gives me a good match, then that's really all I care about. But we had a short little promo with Christian Cage and Jungle Boy again, basically saying, hey, you took Kenny to the brink. Now you have the chance to be the first AEW wrestler to get 50 wins in their career in AEW. So go ahead and do that. And then Jurassic Express came. Luchasaurus saying like to Christian, hey, we appreciate you having Jungle Boy's back. So now we got your back. And also they may be related in some way because of dinosaur reasons, whatever the case may be.
Yes, I think that was a joke saying how old Christian is.
Yeah, which, all right, there you go. Nothing more to say about that. After that was a in-ring interview with Tony Schiavone interviewing all Ego Ethan Page, as well as having Scorpio Sky, the other Men of the Year, in the ring with that, talking about the coffin match with Darby Allin. The crowd was going after Ethan Page. Also at one point they chanted, "We can't hear you." I didn't know if that was actually like they were mocking him or they legit couldn't hear him because his mic was messing up, because there was no issue on Dynamite.
You do okay. So when you're in dailies, if you're not in the right spot, you can't hear anything they say on the mic.
Because it's an open arena?
I guess so. I just, like, when I was there, and me and Tiffany, we were like in the first or third row or whatever, we would just react based on how we were supposed to react. But literally, if somebody was talking, even at the end when like Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara cutting that heartfelt promo after the show was over, couldn't understand a word they said.
Okay, so maybe it just needs to be something with Daly's Place's PA system.
Yes, and I even said, I was like, I don't want to be that guy, because I wanted to tell them we can't understand anything they say. But I was like, it's almost over. They're going back on the road. That's one thing I am thankful for. Shout out to Indoor Buildings for our boys. They'll get to wrestle in air conditioning. I'm pretty sure it's still hot in the ring because of all the lights. But it has to be ready better than being outside in the state of Florida.
It's like, at least it's not fucking humid.
Yes, you will get that. And I was like, because it was like when some people were like, I remember when the Bucks and the FTR had their match, and it was like, it was fucking hot. You know, it was like, dude, it was hot. I believe FTR and the Bucks, it wasn't hot. I think it was kind of cool. But yeah, I think it was FTR, Hangman, and Kenny. It was like freakishly hot. And I was like, I was trying to tell people that. I was like, I was there. We were sweating balls. You know, like, it's hot. But it's Florida. So now they get to go back into these air-conditioned buildings and, you know, get to see around the world. But, just like I said, it's just, I'm very happy that they get to go back indoors.
Yes, but Ethan Page talked about how he's tried many a times to cripple Darby Allin, and how that's not his goal. His goal isn't to beat him, but to cripple him. He's pushed him down the stairs. He's done all different kinds to him, including referencing their hellacious match they had on the Indies where he got thrown into a fucking post. And he's like, so physically, I can't cripple you now. I have to cripple you mentally with the coffin match. So when I put you in that coffin, every time you try to think to go for a coffin drop, every time you do one, you're going to think of me closing that lid on that coffin on your confidence forever. And he was saying that with a fire in his eyes. And then we had a Sting come out. He's been off for a little bit. Ever since Darby told him, hey, I don't want you to come in for this tag match. I'm going to do a handicap match. Stay home. We haven't seen Sting for a little bit. He had been off TV for a couple of weeks. So he comes in carrying a coffin on a little wagon or whatnot, brings it over, and then we cut to the screen and have Darby Allin with Ethan Page's face like taped up to his face. And then he proceeds to shoot a flamethrower at like the outline of a coffin. And then all of a sudden, Sting rips the sheet off the coffin. It's like charred and all that, like it was burned. And then Darby flies out of the coffin and goes straight for Ethan Page. And then when Scorpio tries to stop him, Scorpion Death Drop from Sting onto Scorpio Sky. And he just digs his hands and his fingers into Ethan Page's eyes so much that he gets on the mic. He's like, you know what? You knew you couldn't beat me 100%, so you do this. So you know what? Fucking match is off. And if you want something in writing and you don't put your hands on me, maybe I'll allow the match to go like later down the road, maybe Fyter Fest, and he leaves. But overall, fun little segment. I think Ethan Page is really starting to cement himself as one of the really good heels that they have in AEW. I would like to see Scorpio Sky get a little bit more to do, but that's just me. But this feud between Darby and the Men of the Year, or Darby and Ethan Page, I mean, like Ethan and Darby already have great chemistry with their previous rivalries in other promotions. So these guys work well together. And yeah, this feud's great. I like it a lot. So I'll go to JR on this one, though. Segment wise, what do you think of this? And like going down for this feud, like how you feeling about it?
I like it a lot. I've been a fan of Ethan Page for a while. He has such a great look, and especially over the last 16 months to 2 years, he's really transformed his body to look as good as he does today. I think he's just a natural. He's just a natural heel, somebody that you really want to see get their ass whooped. And Darby Allin, he has a unique persona. People always gonna, really dig him because of his uniqueness. Which having that in wrestling is tough to do, especially when we've seen every single type of character possible. And the good thing about this is that it's taking the right direction where this should be the blow off. And after their coffin match, they'll go their separate ways and they'll be bigger superstars because of it. I definitely see Darby just still contending in that upper mid tier lower main event role, and then I definitely see Ethan Page continuing going up the ladder to even potentially in the next 6 months going for the TNT championship, if not the AEW championship, because that's how good of a heel he can be for AEW. Scorpio does need something because Scorpio is a star and he's been just really just hanging by a thread for over a year, and it hasn't broken through for whatever reason. I don't know if I really believe certain parts of this was waiting for crowds to come back for arenas for some of these future guys like Hangman, like Scorpio Sky. I'll even throw Jungle Boy into that. Like they're waiting for crowds to come back for them to be able to have that big moment, for them to become even bigger breakout stars. But definitely would love to see a lot more with Scorpio though.
Well, I will say this is pound for pound the most handsome tag team in AEW, Ethan and Scorpio. Since I've gotten a little taste, I forgot what it was. It was a little biography show, and I don't believe it was Dark Side of the Ring, but it might have been. But they were showing matches from Evolve with Ethan and Darby, and ever since then, I was like, Ethan Page has to be in AEW. Ethan Page has to be in AEW. And they got to continue this feud in AEW because some of the stuff they did was sick and you really couldn't believe it happened. So the fact that we're going to get an Ethan Page and Darby Allin match eventually is literally one of the things that makes me happiest about Ethan Page coming. I love how they did it. I think we'll talk about the show next week, but I think next week's show was too packed. I don't think they needed the coffin match in that one. Now, if they push the coffin match personally to Fyter Fest Night 2, I don't know why that day is special, why Night 2 would be special, but they should push it back to Night 2 if they could for that coffin match. I love the whole Sting bringing them out in the coffin match, and I will never, and I mean ever, not pop for a Scorpion Death Drop. Sting could be 80 years old, barely able to move, and just kind of falls with the Scorpion Death Drop. I will still pop for it. I I don't know why. It's just a reverse DDT. It's not supposed to be something special, but when he does it, it just looks so cool, especially when he kind of grabs the person's head and looks back at them and then drops them on their head. It's just that whole sequence, that little thing before he does the move is so cool. Scorpio Sky sold it like a mug. I got to give it to him on that one. And then, I just thought that whole little segment was great. But Ethan Page, Darby Allin coffin match, main event of Dynamite, give them the last 30 minutes and let them absolutely kill each other. I'm so excited.
Yeah. We then got singles wrestling action between Jungle Boy versus TH2's and Hardy Family Office's Jack Evans. And this was, of course, leading into Jungle Boy looking to get his 50th win in his AEW career, the first person in AEW to do so. But I have a gripe with this match in particular, not with the match, because the match was strong and it was fun, but more so with one Chris Jericho, who has been on commentary for this show the entire time. And he's done a very well job. He's always done well in commentary, and I've always appreciated having him on. He's a lot of fun to do stuff, and he makes great quips while on commentary. However, he was the one who managed to point out that this match happened to be Jack versus Jack. Jungle Boy Jack Perry, Jack Evans. And I simply have one question. If you were going to bring that up, why on earth did you not call this match the Jack Off? It was right there. It was tantalizingly sitting right in front of you, just asking to be used, and you didn't do it.
Because
I mean, don't understand.
That's what Jerry the King Lawler was there for. That was his thing. No,
but like Jericho brought it up, and he would have been the most apt person to make that call.
Yes,
he didn't do it
because he used to call people jack offs. So yes, so that would have been, yeah.
It was right there. It was right there. I was like screaming, like, bro, it's like not even a hard joke to make. Just say it. It's like a throwaway at this point, but I just want you to say it because, God damn it, it's there and I want it used. Regardless.
Tony Khan's in his ear. Don't say jack off. Don't say jack off. Don't say jack off.
Tony Khan, you're a prude if that was the case. Let the man say that this match is the jack off. It's just too perfect. I'm sorry. I am immature and I like this shit. Anyway, the match itself was fun. Jungle Boy and Jack Evans got to do a lot of great technical, just high, like mixture in with like athletic, agile, technical transitions in their match. Jungle Boy's crazy over. He was able to get the snare trap on Jack Evans to be able to get the win, his 50th win. After the match, however, the Hardy Family Office came to make sure they beat after Jungle Boy because he's gotten into Matt Hardy's business. So honestly, you affiliate yourself with Christian, so now you're gonna face it. Matt Hardy and Christian Cage then come and they start fighting each other. Luchasaurus and Marco Stunt go after Private Party. And then eventually Matt Hardy actually ended up getting beat up a little bit. This was the first time Christian was able to get a good amount of offense on Matt Hardy, and he had to retreat. So we're once again still building to this eventual match between Christian and Matt Hardy, which again, it's sold just because of the history, honestly. Like I don't need much, and I haven't. It's like it's just plenty enough, honestly. The storytelling has just been done between these two guys' careers with this match itself. So this was cool. Jungle Boy being the first wrestler in AEW to get 50 wins is a very cool stat to have, and obviously he's super over, so to be able to tout that, even though he lost the AEW title, he's got at least something to hold on to, even though he lost last week and he didn't become champion. But yeah, nothing really too much. This did exactly what it needed to do, really. But I'll go to JR on this one first. Thoughts on this match?
The one thing I'll say is Jack Evans, I enjoyed his work previous to AEW and Lucha Underground. I think he's a great worker. I just personally, I don't see him and Angelico doing that much in AEW. I think this is basically like a version of a jobber squash match that the AEW would have. And with Jungle Boy, I mean, it's just always going to be a constant buildup because when you look at the AEW roster and you see Jungle Boy and you know he could be a star, he's still only 24 years of age. Like, he just turned 24. And you look at everybody else from like Hangman and Kenny and like even other people like Phoenix and Penta and how long they've been in, you know, in the circuit, whether it was like Impact or New Japan or Lucha Libre, they're going to have a lot of time. Jungle Boy is eventually going to get there, but right now is just keeping him along this track where just investment. And, you know, we essentially got 2 years investment in Adam Page. I really think it's going to be about another 1 to 2 years before that investment in Jungle Boy finally pays off, where he will be the AEW champion. So that's what I look forward to, like in the next upcoming, just continue building Jungle Boy. As far as the other stuff, I'm the complete opposite, unfortunately. Like I'm a big fan of Christian Cage. I enjoyed his work. Actually, as he progressed through leaving WWE to TNA, I grew a huge fondness for Christian Cage, Instant Classic. And then I love what he's doing with AEW. I don't need to see Christian Cage versus Matt Hardy. I don't even want to see Matt Hardy like anymore doing anything. Like, I don't enjoy his work in AEW at all. So I know I'm like one of the few outliers in that, but I'd rather see Christian versus somebody else. I saw that match when I was in 5th grade. I don't need to see it again.
All right.
Oh wow, that hurts my soul. Yeah, Christian is, like, to me, like, he was always consistently good, overshadowed by Edge back in the day. Matt was overshadowed by Jeff back in the day. And it's just like, now at their ages, now Christian is clearly the best wrestler of the four. It's like not even close. He's the only one that kind of looks like, you know, he pretty much looks like he did 10 years ago. He's in perfect shape. He still moves that well. Like, Matt Hardy can barely walk. You see it. And then, you know, Jeff Hardy's the same way. It's just like, you can see the hitch in their giddy up, but Christian's still good. I definitely want to see this feud. I think it appeals to a different audience with AEW than what their normal is. Their normal is the demo, the 18 to 34-year-old men. That's what they're going for. This is for the 35 to 50-year-old men, which is where I'm rolling. You know, the guys that grew up on Christian and Matt Hardy. I mean, I honestly saw the Hardys' first televised match when they were just jobbers. Christian, you know, I saw him when he was Edge's brother, you know, before. It was just, you know, it was like a long time ago. So this feud doesn't need a lot to stoke it, and it's doing what it's supposed to do. Matt Hardy's using his juice to get over his tag team Private Party. And the Butcher, the Blade, all the people that he's with. I do think he needs a champion, though. I do think he does. I think he needs a guy that you see a future in. A lot of his people are just like, you know, Private Party is eventually going to be the guys in the tag team, but who's his singles guy? I mean, he's his singles guy, so I think he definitely needs another guy, personally. But Christian, you know, he's a mentor to Jungle Boy. And that's his role. The role is to get the young people over. I mean, shit, he cut the promo for Jungle Boy last week when he needed it, you know, because, you know, they're not super comfortable with it. But Jungle Boy will get there, and he'll have people like Christian guiding him. So as far as the match, I thought it was great. You know, Jack Evans is he's athletic marvel to me. Every time I see him, I'm surprised about everything that he can do. I saw him walk. We saw him walk on his hands all the way down the aisle on the way to the ring once, and I was just like, he's a freak of nature. And then Jungle Boy is that. He's the guy. He's Sting. He's their Sting. There's no other better comparison to it. I saw how Sting slowly got built up in the mid to late 80s in Crockett and what eventually would be WCW, and he ended up being the franchise. That's the role I see Jungle Boy playing as the franchise. The first of 50 wins is something he can name the hat on. He'll be able, if he ever goes heel, he'll be able to use that then. He had the same amount of wins as my beloved Red Sox. They passed him today. But shout out, I mean, Jungle Boy did great. I thought this match was good.
All right. Well, I mean, as well, I understand, like, Matt Hardy's like stuff in AEW has not even come close to like the stuff he's done in WWE. Like that stuff that he did with Jeff and his singles run there too. It's exponentially and it's got way more legs to it too. But it's such a long time frame ago. It's a different conversation, I think. But I understand if you're not rocking it with it, JR. That being said, though, like again, this match isn't really meant for fans like us. This is for like the lapsed WWE fan who is like wondering what the hell AEW is, or just a WWE fan that's like something that they haven't cared about any of the guys that have been on AEW because they don't know who they are, and then they're like, oh, I recognize Christian and Matt Hardy, and then there you go. There's a little in, maybe you like somebody else. Like you're gonna get that with every wrestling company, just something that doesn't appeal to you. But that's okay because there's like 40 other feuds that's going on that you can find in the span of what AEW's been putting on that you can latch onto and be like, I like that. But either way, after this was a short little promo from MJF talking about how he's going to make an announcement next week where he talks about the stipulations for Chris Jericho in order for him to get one more match with MJF. If Jericho can jump through all the hoops that MJF sets up, then he will have one more match against Chris Jericho to finally like put a pin in this and finish it off, get the last match between these two guys. And then he also used the time to go after Sammy Guevara, being like, you know what, this is being built up as like the future of AEW. Like who's going to be the future of AEW? You know what, Sammy, at the end of the night, it'll be you because I am the now. And very simply put, great promo by MJF. Never really have anything bad to say about his promos. And stipulations-wise, next week, that'll be interesting, exactly. Because, I mean, MJF has done many things when it comes to putting roadblocks in people's way in order to get a match with him. I mean, we saw that with Cody. He lashed him with a belt multiple times and did a whole bunch of other shit that Cody had to do in order to face MJF. So this is not out of character for MJF. If anything, this is just right up his alley.
Yeah, I thought this promo was top notch. Some of his best work. What'd you think, JR?
Have we lost JR?
Amazing. Oh, no, MJF is just amazing. I mean, I talked about how young Jungle Boy is at 24, and MJF is equally as young at the age of 25. But at the age of 25, he's ready to go as your heel champion. If tomorrow Tony Khan says, you know what, we're going to go a different direction, we want MJF to be our AEW World Champion, he would be, I mean, that would be one of the biggest things, having him as your heel champion and having the next, up and coming babyface to chase for the belt. He cuts a promo like nobody else. For my money, the best promo in the business. And on a drop of a dime, he gets you excited. As far as the stipulations, you mentioned earlier, the strap, the 10 lashes. He also created the first ever steel cage match in AEW history with Cody versus Wardlow. So the sky's the limit. It could be another tag team, another steel cage match. It could be another lashing. It could be having breaking a guitar over Jericho's head. Who knows what happens? But it definitely just continue building that up to where the fans of Chris Jericho are going to want to see Chris Jericho tear MJF apart, probably come all out.
Yep, I see that absolutely being like kind of the blow off for that. And it's going to be fun to watch exactly to see what MJF does. We had a short interview with Andrade El Idolo with Alex Abrahantes, and he comments on how last week the Seidels interrupted Andrade from making his huge announcement he was going to make with Vicky Guerrero. And he's like, you know what? He called him Matt something, refused to say his last name. And he's like, you know what? Road Rager in Miami. I will make my AEW in-ring debut against Matt something. So we got that to look forward to. That was really quick. We can move quickly into Tony Schiavone having an interview with the gold collector himself, AEW World Champion Kenny Omega. This promo was Kenny just kind of being like, there's nothing I need to do. I've done everything. I have beat the person who is the toughest guy in AEW. I beat the person who's the top selling merch act in AEW, the person who's the best high flyer, and the best up-and-comer, with it being Jungle Boy most recently. So I don't have anybody in this company left to defeat, so I'm going to take time off. I'm going to defend my other titles that I have. I will be somewhere else. Immediately interrupted by the Dark Order and Evil Uno. And he's like, you have somebody that we have befriended. You used to be good friends with him. He is the number 1 ranked singles wrestler of all time in AEW. And everyone knew it was Hangman. And Kenny's like, if you're talking about that same person, I don't think he'd like you speaking on behalf of him. And he doesn't have the guts to face me. And unless you got something else on your sleeves, up your sleeves, Dark Order, goodbye, good night, I'm out. And this was interesting. I didn't really think the idea was that Dark Order was going to be the one to make the call and try to challenge Kenny on behalf of Hangman. I did kind of like it character-wise because, of course, we would see later on in the show, which we'll talk about that little segment with Hangman and the Dark Order, why exactly the Dark Order took it upon themselves to make the challenge for Hangman. And honestly, makes sense. Hangman has been dodging the question of Kenny Omega for the last few weeks, only talking about Dark Order's accomplishments, what they've been doing, like focusing on like the people that he wants to be around and just carrying that drink in his hand and avoiding Kenny Omega at all costs. So honestly, makes sense as to why they took it upon themselves to do this. And I like this segment. I thought it was cool. And of course, Kenny Hangman, like, duh, we know that's a seller. For the AEW title, yes, no question about it. And also, it's very much like we've known that Hangman was set up to be like the workhorse of AEW, the one that was, he came out front in the beginning of the company's first day saying he wanted to be the first AEW world champion. Wasn't the case, but he has grown significantly in popularity since that time. And I think people, if there was anybody that I think people would be itching to take the title off of Kenny Omega, Hangman would be perfect. I think it would be a great decision if that's what they decided to do. But of course, we'll see what goes on from that point on. But JR, first off, thoughts on this segment and anything else, like if you wanted to comment on Andrade, what you got to say for this?
First thing I'll mention about Andrade, I just want to say for over 15 years, professional wrestling has not had a Latin superstar of the, and when I mean that, I'm talking about somebody the caliber of Eddie Guerrero or Rey Mysterio after Eddie passed away. And this is actually something that Dave Meltzer brought up months ago about like how big Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio was for WWE at the time, especially in those Hispanic markets, Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, California. And I can tell you from experience living on the West Coast, when Eddie, Los Guerreros were doing their thing, when Rey Mysterio was doing his thing during that time, I mean, people came out in droves. And I hope and pray that AEW takes advantage of having Andrade, who looks like $1 million every single time he's come out for AEW in the last month. After Double or Nothing, he looks like money. He is a world champion caliber. Even as a heel, if you push him, you will grow your audience. Because as somebody who is a Mexican, I can tell you from experience, Mexicans love supporting fellow Mexicans. It's happened in boxing with Canelo Alvarez. It happened in the UFC with Cain Velasquez. It happened in professional wrestling with Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio. And I know people like saying this because, you know, you have Kenny's the face of AEW or Cody's the face of AEW. If you make Andrade the face of AEW, you will grow your audience. I mean, and as you talked about earlier, that lapsed fan of Christian and Matt Hardy, you're going to grow your Latin audience with Andrade. And that's the reason I've always been very high on pushing Penta and Phoenix for the same reason. Moving on to that segment, I love this Kenny. I don't like Kenny with Don Callis. I hate Don Callis. I don't like Kenny with the Young Bucks. I just think the whole thing's... But this Kenny, I don't know what about him, just him as a heel being this character, I just enjoy him as a single person so much. I find it very enjoyable, him tapping into those type of promos he was doing in New Japan. this, obviously, if we're planting the seeds for Hangman Adam Page, this is something I thought about from the minute that Kenny Omega defeated Hangman Adam Page at Full Gear 2020. Eventually, this will come around full circle, and Adam Page will get his comeuppance in an AEW World Championship match. I think if it does happen All Out, I thought maybe it came a little bit sooner. I thought at the earliest would be Full Gear 2021. I have heard rumors and things have been posted. I think even Kenny mentioned about how his body's kind of breaking down on him. He may need some time off, so they may pull that trigger a little bit earlier, which would make sense because All Out 2019, when Hangman got the title shot against Jericho for the first ever AEW World Champion, would be 2 years to that weekend. So it also makes sense too. I think it's the right move. I've been very high at Adam Page prior to AEW. For me, I think Hangman Adam Page would be the first made star for AEW, because if you think of whether it's Cody, Kenny, Young Bucks, Jericho, they made their bones somewhere else. But Hangman was still not at that level of the other, quote unquote elite, and I felt would be the first like homemade world champion for AEW, and I really can't wait for that to happen.
All right, going to Floyd.
This was great because it was so different than any other. The Hangman thing was so different than anything I've ever seen. Like, I don't know how long Austin's been watching, but in my 30 years, I haven't seen a group of people come out because one of the wrestlers has lost confidence to do it himself. And I think it's just a different take that people of this generation, and like I might be taking this somewhere no one else is thinking about, but people of this generation, like mental health, anxiety, stress is a big thing, and talking about it is a big thing. So you're seeing this wrestler, one of the best wrestlers in the world, actually going through this bout of...
For the ones standing guard, for the eagle-eyed, for the knights in shining armor, and for all those who support them, we are Grainger, your experienced safety partner, offering supplies and solutions for every industry, committed to helping keep your facilities safe and your people safer. Call, clickgrainger.com/safety, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Self-doubt, anxiety, to the point where he doesn't even want to talk about getting his title shot. And who has to lift him up? His friends. They come out and talk. And they didn't just throw the challenge out. They never said his name, but everybody knew what they were talking to. And they was like, why did we do it? Because you needed the push. You needed the kick in the ass. You're good enough to take the title. You don't believe in yourself. We believe in you enough for it. I just think it's a very 2021 going forward modern day story.
Yeah, and like he said, it's like you've waited long enough. Take it now. It's your moment. And the crowd 100% agrees with it because like I said, the change in dynamic of Hangman Adam Page's of their response towards Hangman has grown significantly since he teamed with Kenny, since he started coming around drinking beer with the fans, since he's just been like a full on, like, you could describe it as like Stone Cold, but like but way more cowboy, and less like rattlesnake, I guess you could say. But yeah, the crowd is 100% behind the idea of like, you know what, you've waited long enough. Go ahead. Like, you've proven you don't really need to do much else. We are totally behind you doing this. And the fact that, like I said, like they've planted this of like Kenny's not been talked about by Hangman. He doesn't want to talk about it. He's just not even had it on his mind. And even the Dark Order knows, like, bro, it's like, what do you have to worry about? You've been on fire. But this feud is just, it's this right here is like, it's been done. They did it differently, even though they didn't even need to do something crazy different like that for this kind of feud. But it's shown them being super creative with how they take a surefire hit like Kenny versus Hangman for the title, and they've done interesting things with it too. So props to that, honestly. We can get into the TNT title match between Miro and Brian Pillman Jr. Miro, of course, been on a tear with that TNT title. Brian Pillman did really good in this match. He had great moments where he would just like fly out of the ring to be able to go into Miro, and just really had a good response from the crowd as well. It's a transitional match, of course, for the TNT title, just so Miro can continue to rack up his wins. Brian did great though, and I'm loving seeing Brian work. I'm interested to see exactly if the Varsity Blondes, like, if they decide to do more of them as a tag team, because of course, like, wow, they used Griff Garrison being attacked by Miro for storyline reasons going into this match, for it being personal. Brian said it earlier in the night in his promo. I'm interested to see if they continue to try to move them up in the already stacked tag division that AEW has, because I think the response is there, but I'm not fully yet. But regardless, this match was great. Miro is fucking one of my favorite things in AEW. He's so good. I love this Miro. This is just like seeing somebody that you've seen mishandled and just like not been able to just fully go out and just be a beast and do the things he wants to do. And it's so great to see Miro in his element, and like he's just killing it. And yeah, this TNT run is great, and I know it's gonna be super satisfying to see who ends up taking it off him, because it's gonna be a huge pop and a huge rub for whoever does so. But Miro, I think you'd be silly to think he doesn't have world title aspirations down the road, though. No question about it. JR, first off, thoughts on this TNT title match?
I really want to echo your sentiments. I've been a huge on Miro for over 3 years. I've said it before on the podcast. I think going into Double or Nothing, at one point he had one of the highest selling merchandise for his previous company. He looks like $1 million. I mean, he looks like he will rip your head off legitimately and throw it back at you like if you're a bowling pin. I didn't like the way he started with AEW, but the monster Miro is amazing. The only thing I don't like, though, is and I talked to Floyd about this off the air, and Floyd did allude that it could lead to an interesting finish later, is with his finisher, he's doing this thing where he gets into that camel clutch, and then he leans back, and he essentially is pinning himself. And it could lead to a situation, and I would say if you ever seen WrestleMania 8 with Roddy Piper, Bret Hart, or Survivor Series 96 with Bret Hart, Stone Cold, I believe it happened with Darby Allin and 10 in the TNT Championship match, where the guy rolls over, gets the 3 count from a submission. It doesn't look right. I don't like that. I'd rather just have him do it regularly. The only thing I want to say, just because I feel like I need to say it, I hate AEW rankings. I hate the fact that a wrestling company has rankings, because you have Brian Pillman Jr., who's ranked as a number 1 ranked tag team with Griff Garrison, unranked the singles competition going against Miro, and then vice versa. You have an unranked tag team getting a tag team title shot against Young Bucks next week. It's just, and people bring it up, and everybody's just like, oh, it's you don't have to, some weird thing, and I just don't like rankings in general wrestling. I think it's dumb. I don't even like it in UFC, because it was just made for them to sell UFC fight nights. So that's my only thing I wanted to say about that.
It's just
let me some Miro.
It's just so many weirder things to me in wrestling to dislike than the ranking system, especially when they do go out of their way to explain, like, the reason Eddie and Penta get to jump is because they were in an eliminator match and they won a right for the title shot, which is around the rankings, just like sometimes in other sports rankings, you still get a title shot even though you might not be number 1 contender. So I kind of get it that way, but I'm not going to complain about your complaint. That's your ability. I completely understand it, because logically it doesn't make sense. The TNT title, though, I will say, it has worked outside of the rankings the whole time. The rankings, I don't even think really apply to the TNT title, because Cody did an open challenge and just wrestled a whole bunch of people that didn't even work for the company. So the TNT title has never been about the rankings. It's about who the champion challenges or wants to fight at the time. But the world title definitely is about the rankings. Being the number 1 contender means you're the number 1 contender for the AEW title. This match, Miro is booked perfectly. I mean, I wish I had a complaint. I don't. Miro's, he has reached that level that everybody was begging for him to reach. But of course, we live in a time where patience is not something that we do very well. So, yeah, Miro's where he's supposed to be. He looks like a monster. I want him to beat everybody else. Throwing out this prediction, Miro versus Cody at All Out. Throwing that out there. I threw it out there to JR. I just want it out there so I can say I'm right later. But, if I'm not right, I won't bring it up.
Okay. Yeah, it never happened if that was the case. But, yeah, I understand, too, about the game over finisher. But again, it could be used to have him lose the title if he just gets too overzealous.
Exactly.
And also, I agree. Like, it is like a wham bam slam wrestling, like, fucking showmanship thing. Like, it really doesn't necessarily do that much more damage than when he does it normally. Like, but I think people mostly get it. But
yeah, I mean, you're like bent in half technically when he goes all the way back. It's like you're bent in half with a 265-pound man on you pulling back. I think it still hurts. I would think. I don't want it ever done to me.
I'm not going to have Miro put it on me to test to see which one hurts more, whether he does it normally or if he leans back. I'm not going to ask. I'm not going to test that.
When we get to Chicago for All Out, I'm going to try it on Floyd when we get to the hotel room.
Well, okay. First of all, it's going to hurt me because I am the least flexible human on earth. I got to take it.
Put it on the AEW on the All Things Elite Twitter. My bad.
Yeah, I got to take a deep breath to reach down to touch my knee. So I'm not the person that you want to fix. Now, Austin looks really, really flexible. Look, and he's young. And he's young. And I mean, he runs like 10 miles a day. I think he would probably be a better test subject.
Full of shit.
He'd be better test subject for you. He's in super good shape. You know what I mean? Moving
off of this conversation. There's the Dark Order Hangman backstage segment that we got. We already talked about that a little bit. Short little segment with Team Taz with Hook and Powerhouse Hobbs, where they announced how Brian Cage is going to be defending the FTW Championship against Ricky Starks on AEW Dynamite July 14th.
Those effers, they couldn't push it back one more week. One more week. They had to do it in Austin.
Yep, they had to do it in Austin. Couldn't do it so your boy Floyd could go and see that match. I'm excited for the match, honestly. I kind of would have wished that they actually got a full-on segment for Brian Cage and Ricky to get face-to-face and stuff like that. But I know Ricky technically is still dealing with an injury at the same time. But I mean, he'll be cleared for the 14th still, it seems like. But I'm glad that we're at least getting what could be the closing point of this feud, or possibly more so going on afterwards. But yeah, it gives Team Taz something to do, which I'm always happy with. But yeah, I mean, is Ricky really going to beat Brian though? That's my only question. Does anyone see that happening, or am I the only one that thinks that's it's a foregone conclusion that Brian kills Ricky?
No, I think Ricky wins. I think Team Taz is turning on Brian Cage.
Okay.
That's what I think. I think that's how it's been written. Brian Cage is a going face. So I even think, I might not say a new person debuts, but I think someone else joins Team Taz.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how I see it. I don't know. What do you think, Mr. JR?
I agree. I with you, Floyd. I do think that Ricky Starks wins due to interference. I think something will happen. I think we're going to potentially get a feud that I thought was going to happen last year. I think we're going to end up getting a babyface Cage versus a heel Powerhouse Hobbs feud, where last year I thought we were going to get a massive babyface Hobbs versus the heel Brian Cage feud. I think it's really going to be used to push Hobbs as the big monster heel for Team Taz, and you'll see Brian Cage as the new babyface monster.
All right. I guess I just assumed that they were going to really continue this feud much afterwards, but if they are going to do so, then yeah, I guess that makes the most sense if that's the case. Next up, though, we have AEW Women's Champion Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, teaming with Rebel to face the Native Beast Nyla Rose and Vicky Guerrero. Now, we have to comment on the fact that at one point in the match when Rebel tried to go break up a pin, she injured herself and immediately had to crawl out to get out of the ring and be checked up on doctors. Do we have a confirmation as to exactly, because we're filming this a day after Dynamite aired? Do we have a confirmation on what the injury was, Floyd?
Dislocated kneecap.
All right, yeah, that sucks. And do we have like a prognosis on the?
Most of the time, if they can just pop it back into place, she'll have a knee pad and be on crutches, which she's been on crutches for her gimmick before, so it kind of works.
It genuinely kind of works, yeah, in that sense. It's kind of weird how that happened. But either way, it sucked to see that happen. You could tell as soon as she made contact with the breakup of the pin, like, she was hurt. She had to be, like, very slowly moved out of the way by Nyla over outside the ring because she hurt herself pretty bad with that. Regardless, though, this match was fine, I think. I mean, it's a tag team match where we have Vicky Guerrero being a part of the match, which, I mean, I love Vicky. I mean, I know she's not a wrestler, but like, she's a great heel, heat magnet. But besides that, it was there for Britt to be able to put that on Vicky and get after her, but like to have something at least to continue onward with the feud, because after the match was over, Nyla jumps Britt and slams her through a table on the outside. Beast bombing her through that table, just to be able to continue the heat for Nyla to eventually challenge Britt for the title in singles action. And like it did what it needed to do. Obviously, it sucked with the Rebel injury, but I think this was fine enough, and it was a decent enough like prelude into the main event match that we would have. I'll go to JR first. Oh, or do you want to go, Floyd?
I was just going to say, and JR can talk about the match. I think they still should be getting Thunder Rosa more wins. Because I feel like we're building...
I'm surprised we're not getting more of her.
Yeah, I feel like we're building the Thunder Rosa versus Britt it all out, and I'm just like, okay, Thunder Rosa should be, wrestling weekly, and she should be on Dynamite. She should be, like, when Britt and Nyla go against each other, Thunder Rosa should be in the crowd or on commentary. You have to remind people that she's still a threat. I'm just talking about the general audience. This is not, like, super hardcore thinking forward wrestling fans like that. You have to give them, you have to, like, okay, well, there's Thunder back over there, and I don't think they've done a good enough job of that. But what did you think about the match, Mr. JR?
As you mentioned, it is what it is. You had Vicky Guerrero, who's not a wrestler, and you have Rebel, who unfortunately suffered that dislocated kneecap. I was just doing some research. Dislocation is weird, but it's one of the more, if you're gonna have an injury, dislocation is better than broken or torn anything. So it looks like 6 to 8 weeks she should be hopefully fine. And this is actually a feud though that from the minute the AEW was created with the women's division, when they signed Britt Baker and Nyla Rose, I was like, that's their Gail Kim versus Awesome Kong. Well, Gail Kim versus Awesome Kong was for TNA. That could be Nyla Rose and Britt Baker. I even thought about it at Double or Nothing when they had their end up having their fatal 4-way match that had Awesome Kong and Kylie Ray. The only thing though is it's very weird though, because I'm assuming how this is quickly progressing, this will be a match that will happen at Fyter Fest or Fight for the Fallen. So the problem is that you just turned a heel Britt Baker babyface, and AEW doesn't have a lot of heels. Heel females, like it's like Nyla and Allie, and like that's really
Penelope Ford.
So like, who are you gonna go to All Out if she's your babyface? Unless it's just the two, I don't want to use the term, but I'll just say the two, baddest women, or I was gonna say baddest bitches, but the baddest women of AEW who had that lights out match, a non-sanctioned lights out match, Britt versus Thunder Rosa at All Out. Like, I don't see where the direction going after Nyla Rose.
I will say, whether it be, like I said, if they end up having Allie get a shot for it, I think the end goal is to go to, oh my God, why am I blanking on her name? That bitch. Fucking...
Jade Cargill.
Jade Cargill, yeah. That's going to her, I think. I think that's the end goal, at least for this feud. Like, at least for this run, is that Jade would be the one that goes after her.
Yeah, I made it very clear. Jade should very much be undefeated for a long time, but not necessarily in the title picture. And then, you get to that point where it's pretty much inevitable and she has to be in the title picture. That makes sense. As far as this match, it was a match. It was there. Vicky Guerrero shouldn't wrestle on national TV. I mean, we even talked about it. We thought it was going to be a swerve where she had a last minute substitution or something like that. I thought it would be something, like no way Vicky Guerrero is wrestling. And she's very entertaining to me. I love Vicky. Don't get me wrong. I love her, but I don't want to see her wrestle. You have too many wrestlers which she doesn't have to wrestle.
I want to say this, though. The one thing that we haven't talked about, I do agree with you, what you guys said about Jade Cargill, because I think she is one of the most amazing, gifted athletes I've ever seen in professional wrestling. Looks like $1 million. Very quickly has proven that she has the athletic ability to catch on very quickly. I think that's in my opinion, I feel like that's a year away. But again, it is wrestling, so anything can happen. I just don't see them pulling trigger for All Out or Full Gear to have that go that direction. But I definitely see maybe next Double or Nothing or next All Out 2022.
And I think Jade needs to be the face, though. I think she wouldn't beat Britt. She would beat whoever's after Britt, personally.
The one thing I will say, though, is we are now in July. Just throwing this out there. Going into Garland, Texas, the second night of Fyter Fest, that will be the first event, like the first AEW event, that a whole lot of very talented women would be potentially available for AEW to bring in. That could lead to something for All Out. Just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
It's absolutely a possibility.
I mean, that's the great thing about Texas is that they have a thriving, independent scene. There's shows going on all the time. They have women's wrestling. I believe Booker T has a complete women's show coming up soon. So, yeah, they'll have a lot of talent that they could bring in.
Yeah, and you've still got, of course, the few women wrestlers that were released in the wave of WWE releases, of course, that might be getting a call from AEW. You'll probably see some additions to the roster, I think, eventually, at least
that's what I was alluding to. I didn't want to go out and say it, but I said after July, that event in Garland, Texas, that would be the first official AEW event that anybody who was there was Chelsea Green and now the Inspiration would be available to be part of AEW.
Yep. Yeah. And my favorite name to throw out there every now and then, Tessa Blanchard. I just like to throw it out there. I know people, I know people have different feelings, but I want her to come to AEW, and she lives in Texas. Yeah. All right. So, yeah, that would be cool.
All right. Finally, main event time. We had the first time ever meeting of the Pinnacles, MJF versus the Spanish guy, Sammy Guevara of the Inner Circle. This was a really great main event. Sammy did crazy great stuff. Floyd mentioned this before, but I mean, it's one of those things. I understand if people aren't a fan of this specifically with AEW. MJF hit a fucking jumping tombstone from the second rope on Sammy, and he kicked out of that. In any other world, that would be a finisher, and that would end the match. But or if it was in a tag match and that happened, someone would break it up, or someone would interfere and cause the referee to look away or whatnot. I understand if that's an issue for some people. It's a crazy, ridiculous spot that would do so much damage, but I get it. And I'm sure Floyd will cover that a little bit more if he wants to talk about the match after that. But this match was great. Sammy, literally these are everyone would talk about AEW being they're only known for bringing in guys from WWE. I'm there's two non-WWE guys right there. Two of their younger guys in AEW main eventing Dynamite and fucking tearing the house down. So they did so well. MJF always bring quality. Having Jericho try to stop Sean Spears from interfering in the match, but then getting hit in the back by Wardlow and then thrown off of the stage. And then Sean Spears causing while the distracted referee checks on Jericho, hits Sammy with the chair, and just MJF slowly goes and makes the cover and gets the cheap win. Works great. Sammy isn't going to suffer too much for this. MJF, of course, is still crazy over and needs to continue that heat going into when he faces Jericho again. And Sammy, I think, he'll be good regardless. But this was such a great closing match to the last Daily Place Dynamite, at least for a few months. JR, first off, I'll go to thoughts on this main event.
This main event, honestly, I think this may be, without even, top 5 AEW match, they've had in the almost 2-year history of AEW Dynamite. It had everything you can ask for. It had grappling, had technical abilities, had high flying. How about that crazy aerial top rope spin that Sammy did over the guardrail, picture perfect to hit MJF.
He flew in like a cannonball.
I mean, if you look at that, in order for him to do that with neither one of them getting hurt and landing into chairs, it has to be picture perfect accuracy, and Sammy nailed it. They are for sure, the future of AEW. Sammy, the guy, we said it with Jungle Boy, and I'm saying it with Sammy. In 2 years, that's your TNT champion. It's just these guys are really young, but they're really good. So that's why they're on TV, because they deserve to be on TV. To me, it's very reminiscent of the young Hardy Boys and young Eddie Christian that we saw. Like, their time, they need to be on TV, but their time is going to come. And that's what I see with Sammy Guevara. The only, and real quick shout out to the Canadian God, the chairman, Sean Spears. Happy Canada Day to you, sir. The one thing that does what I want to say that I wish AW cuts back on is not going to happen, but sometimes there's a little bit too much. The term is called fuckery. I just
Interference,
can't say I that's what we call it. GCW, they call it fuckery, but you had it in the opening match, that led to Penta and Eddie Kingston win. You had it in this one that led to MJF win. It's just sometimes I wish they just dial it back. In those two instances, it's very hard because you don't want to hurt either. You don't want to hurt the Young Bucks because they're the champions. You don't want to hurt Sammy Guevara. But at the same time, it's kind of like MJF winning cleanly makes him, even a bigger deal. But that's the only thing. I mean, when I say negative, I'm just tiny negative. It's just like 1% negative. It's just, I wish it would have been a more clean, but I understand why they did it. And it's to protect Sammy.
Yeah, and again, I think it's fair to say you like it if a match was ended cleanly and didn't have interference. But I will say, I will take shenanigan wins over DQ and countout wins. Every single day of the week. I will take that every day of the week.
Well, halfway through this match, I had that 5-star feeling. I was like, man, this is a 5-star match. This is one of the best matches I've seen all year, maybe last year. They have this amazing chemistry. I believe around the tombstone spot, I was like, I'm still 5 stars. I don't like the kick out, but whatever. He hits the 630, and I was like, I'm loving it. And then the interference comes. Now, interference is wrestling to me. I will say that. It is wrestling. To me, interference and run-ins are just much wrestling as a wrist lock or a headlock or a finisher. So I think they go hand in hand. This particular match and how good it was and how amazing I was into it. Good Lord, I hate it. It worked exactly how they wanted to because I hated MJF so much for the interference because I was like, man, this match is so good. This is so good. This is so good. Why? And then, the MVP of the Pinnacle, my boy, the Perfect 10, Sean Spears, boom, hits a home run on his head. And honestly, this episode of AEW Dynamite was to me the most Horseman that the Pinnacle has looked. I mean, that's
a statement.
That finish, basically, that was 1985, 86 era 4 Horseman Ric Flair finish, if I've ever seen one. This is the most that they've looked like the Horsemen. It started last week with Sound Spears loosening, trying to hurt Sammy Guevara before his match, and then them jumping Conan, and it was like I was starting to feel it, and it's like they are fully in their Horseman stride right now. They look like the Horsemen. MJF is the perfect leader. I don't know if he's as good at 24 as Ric Flair was at 24, because I have no idea how good Ric Flair was at 24. I think he was like 35 before I even started watching him. But MJF is special. And someone is special when he has had a great match with a guy that wrestles Mox's style, a guy that wrestles Cody style, and a guy, Jungle Boy and Sammy Guevara, the two more quick and high flyer styles. He is so good that he looks good no matter who he's wrestling, and he makes them look good. Pay attention to MJF. People will be talking about him as far as one of the best wrestlers in the world, and not because of his mic skills, because of what he does in the ring. So I just thought this match was special. I think I went ahead and went with 4 1/4, even with the interference. But yeah, I honestly can say it's like, I don't think a clean loss would have hurt. Well, a clean-ish loss would have hurt Sammy at all. But it does work for MJF's character. That's how he won. Because he said he'd win clean in the middle. And he literally won in the middle of the ring. And if the rest don't see it, it's clean. It was a perfect main event for these guys. Perfect showcase of the youth that AEW has. I'm hoping some people saw it for the first time. Were like, well, I want to keep up with these two.
Yeah, because you should, because they're freaking good. And the last thing they did for AEW Dynamite for this night was a great little video package, little tribute montage of since they moved to the Daily's Place when COVID hit back in March. Just a montage of some of the great moments that happened in the Daily's Place run with AEW Dynamite. Really cool to see this like flood of montage of great moments that we've had over the year. During the pandemic, basically, like they're just giant, like thank you to Jacksonville for holding it down for AEW during this ridiculous time, and for the fans that came in droves when they were allowed to and shouted and screamed and cheered and chanted and did all that. It really was a great thing to watch. I don't want to mention it too much because it's stupid. After that, we had JR flub and say WWE Dynamite. And Twitter went after him crazy. Fucking guys, knock it off. Knock it off.
Dude, I was so upset at this because I misspeak on this show once a week. Once at least. Like I'll be like, I'll be like MJF, I mean Chris Jericho and stuff like that, and it's just he's been on TV forever. And the sad thing, the thing that you have to accept, and I don't understand why people don't, is this man's almost 70. And you're saying, over the last 6 months, he messed up 5 times. That's not a lot for what he does for a living. You understand that, right? 99.9% of the show, he doesn't mess up. But that one flub, it happens. But yeah, I'm always going to be like, the dude's 70, I'm 40 and I forget things. As I pointed out on Twitter, me and my friends are old enough where we still call each other. Well, occasionally I will see something and I'll be like, I need to call my friend Jason. And I'll pick up the phone, dial the number, and it starts ringing. And it rings like 3 or 4 times. He answers the phone and I'm like, I completely fucking forgot why I called you.
Yeah, and here's the deal. Here's the deal with the whole situation too. I mean, we literally had fucking Dave LaGreca of Busted Open saying, if you tweeted something about JR's flub and we're like giving him shit for it, you're not a wrestling fan, which is a major statement. But I will say, like, I won't go that far. But the people that are like going after and dogging him for it, y'all can't do the shit he does. Even at 70, y'all can't do the shit he does.
Oh no, I commentate shows for local indies, nothing on the level of AEW. I have no problem admitting this. This is just my friends say, hey, you want to come call these shows? And dude, if you probably counted in that 3 hours how many times I messed up or said the wrong name or wrong finisher, I called the guy the wrong thing for like the whole match, and then I realized I was talking about the wrong guy. It's hard. It is insanely hard.
I'm making it my career to do this thing, and like I am knowing how hard this job is, and I'm not good at all. I am just starting, and I know JR is one of the greats, and he will always be one of the greats. The fact that he's even still commentating after everything he's been through, after so much he's given to the business, even with his condition that he's had since he's been in the business, like, y'all are a bunch of fucking scrubs. You can't even sniff the shit that he does at this level. So kindly shut the fuck up and sit in your place. Like, honestly, like, enough. Like, you're ridiculous. But regardless of that, the final segment was amazing.
Can this JR interject?
Yeah, absolutely. This JR can totally interject.
The one thing I think people need to understand is, and I want to make a general assessment, is that I feel like the people who are saying this are these young Gen Z individuals. And didn't grow up with JR like I know I did and Floyd did. And they often criticize them because they come from this internet wrestling age of they're like, they want Mauro Ranallo, or they want, Don Callis, or they want these guys that to them is like the indie guys, in my opinion. And I love Mauro Ranallo. I watched him commentate on Strikeforce, MMA, Bellator, MMA, professional boxing. Like, they need to go get these guys. Okay, how do you know they even want to come? How do you know they would want to come to potentially replace Jim Ross? The second thing is, like, do you realize how much credibility Jim Ross gives to AEW over Excalibur? As great as I love Excalibur, I think Excalibur is amazing. Jim Ross is called wrestling matches for National Wrestling Alliance, World Championship Wrestling, Smoky Mountain Wrestling, World Wrestling Federation, and to World Wrestling Entertainment. When at a time over 5 million people were watching wrestling, Jim Ross was commentating. He brings that credibility and legitimacy to the point where even after he left WWE, they wanted him in New Japan Pro Wrestling. They wanted him to call even MMA. He was calling boxing for, I believe it was CBS or Fox Sports. It was boxing in Vegas that I tuned in because Jim Ross was commentating those events. No other reason, just because Jim Ross was there. He brings a legitimacy and credibility to your wrestling promotion. That's why you have Jim Ross, because to get everybody else. And I think that's what people fail to understand, is that you as a person, as a viewer, whether you're 18 to 25 or is just one segment of a bigger population that AEW is trying to attract. Because, and I'm going to be completely honest, like, people may disagree with me, professional wrestling numbers right now are not good, especially when you look at where it was, 5 to 8 years ago. It's doing well, and I'm sure they're happy with it, but they would love to get back to over 2 million people, especially when you consider TNA was. Having people like Jim Ross and having guys like, and you had mentioned earlier with the Christian Cage and Matt Hardy, it helps with that. And then you grow your younger people, where Excalibur will be potentially the next Jerry the King Lawler in his shoes, where maybe you'd get a new up-and-comer commentator that would replace Jim Ross in a year or two. It's all about, it's an equation that you have to make yourself get a broader audience. That's what it is. And I just think people, I get it, and it's a gaffe, but like, did he commit murder on national television? No, he made a gaffe.
If you think it's funny, of course, yeah, it's funny. Like it's like if a guy slips up on a promo or something like that, it's always funny to take a laugh at it. But to be like, JR fucking sucks, you're full of shit. Like you're full of shit. And also, if you're gonna go on the mindset of like, why not get a guy like Morrow? Morrow screws up too. Morrow's been on camera and he's messed up calls too. No commentator is perfect. There are different styles for different shows and different matches in different companies. Everybody is at a level where they just try to do their own thing and try to do what is needed to get the match over and to sell what's happening. And JR still does his job better than most commentators at 70. And he's still one of the greats. So you're not going to be able to touch him on that. And yes, he messed up. Everyone has messed up, including everyone on that booth in Dynamite, including everybody in WWE, including everyone in New Japan. No commentator has gone their entire career without making a flub. It's not possible. You are going to flub, and you just got to deal with it. But that, I want to leave it at that because I don't want to focus too much on that because I just want to really, before we get into the Road Rager preview, I just want to say, again, the time frame of what we've had in Daily's Place Dynamite and during the pandemic with AEW, it's crazy how good it was considering the circumstances because we got so many great moments, so many great matches, so many great championship reigns and so many great title retains and victories and new champions and stars being made and crazy matches that we would have never expected to have in pro wrestling if it wasn't for the circumstances that were brought. And yeah, I want to say one last time before we get into the preview, I thoroughly enjoyed what AEW gave me because it was one of the things that got me through this fucking mess of a year.
Let me add to that, Austin, is because I wanted to double check. March 18th was the first AEW Dynamite that was at Daily's Place, and when Cody cut that promo, that was the first day that I had to work from home, and I'm still working from home to this day. March 18, 2020, to this day, I'm still working from home for my job. Mm-hmm. If you people go back, and I have a very vivid memory during that time when AEW went to Daily's Place, and then 2 weeks later they started doing the shows at Nightmare Factory. The world, and it's still chaotic. It was insane. Grocery stores were cleared out. You couldn't find diapers. You couldn't find formula. You couldn't find meat. You couldn't find dairy products. You couldn't find nothing. We had no idea what was going to happen. We had no idea how long we were going to be home. I remember some of those events, they were quickly trying to tape everything because they were literally saying the health department was going to come and send them home and shut them down. All wrestling companies, WWE included. I mean, you had a situation where the Young Bucks couldn't come out of California. Flights were canceled. People couldn't, you could not leave your home. And we, as a global society, have gone through a lot in the last 15 months. And I know a lot of countries are still going through a lot, especially as this pandemic still goes on. And here in America, things have opened up because of vaccines, distribution, and stuff like that. But it has been a crazy year. And to think about how we all have endured through loss and heartache and been able to get to this point is just very surreal thinking about that, especially when I saw that video. And the night before, so on Tuesday, I went to a baseball game and I was surrounded by 50,000 people. And then to see that video where Cody's cutting that promo in front of an empty, arena, and knowing that in about 2 months, we're all going to be together for All Out in Chicago. It's just really crazy to think about everything we've gone through in these last 15 months.
Absolutely. Floyd, you got anything to add to that?
Dude, again, all I could say is I keep forgetting the time of year it was, right? It doesn't feel like 7 months ago Brody Lee passed away, right? I mean, COVID took a year, and just literally me trying to explain what happened in 2020 versus 2019, I get mixed up all the time. Man, my appreciation for what AEW was I'm like, I don't know if I would have remained sane if it wasn't for the company lasting. So they shout out video and everything that went into that, just it touched my heart, just because I know those people in that 20-30 mile radius. I know some people that drove up from Miami all the time, and that's not a short drive. It's just like, I shout out to the people of Florida and Jacksonville for keeping AEW going.
Absolutely. Now we can finally get towards the end of this episode of All Things Elite by talking about our preview for Road Rager next week in Miami, Florida. The matches that have been announced, we have the Jericho MJF standoff, which will have the stipulation announcement from Jericho about for MJF about what Jericho has to do in order to get a match with him. Eddie and Penta team up to face off against the Young Bucks for the AEW Tag Team titles. They will immediately get a match again for the titles, so that's when we're getting the tag title match between them. Cody Rhodes faces off against QT Marshall in a South Beach strap match. Chris Statlander teams with Orange Cassidy to face the Bunny and the Blade in mixed tag team action. Andrade gets his match against Matt something. And Jake Hager and Proud and Powerful will be having Conan on ringside to face off against FTR and Wardlow with Tully Blanchard on ringside.
I think they made a mistake because they said in the first time in Dynamite history is a mixed tag team match. But Cody and Red Velvet.
Yeah, against Shaq. Once again, commentators make mistakes. It's not uncommon.
And it was the video package for that match. It's like first time in AEW Dynamite history. I'm like, I don't think so, but okay, whatever. They have a lot to live up to for as far as that. The first mixed tag to this mixed tag, but I think they got the talent to pull it off. I'm very excited about next week. Thing I'm most excited about other than Cody is that 6-man tag, because I think some shit's going down, and this is like the first time really Proud and Powerful and FTR are in a regular match, so I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what we get there. I don't know how long. I'm wondering, and JR maybe get his thoughts, how long can they hold off from just giving us the tag team match? Because they're obviously building it up to be a huge match. But when do you think it's going to actually happen? So I'll pass it on to JR to talk about the show next week.
Well, July is packed because you have Road Rager, and then you're going to go into Fyter Fest Night 1, Fyter Fest Night 2 at the end of July. Fight for the Fallen. I mean, the way that they kind of plan things out, I could see them waiting to All Out to have that match, and it seems like why that's it entire 2 months. But you also have, when you think about it, like when is the last time FTR had a match on Dynamite? So they've always, in order to try to get more people on Dynamite, they kind of have like for lack of a better term, a rotation. So I could see something happening at Road Rager that's going to delay them getting back in the ring with each other until like August. That would set up All Out, because I really don't, at the end of the day, besides the tag team, the Young Bucks tag team championship match, like there is no other bigger tag team match to have than Proud and Powerful versus FTR.
Okay. Well, if anyone else has anything else to say about the preview, I think we can just get the last couple news headlines out of the way, and then we can wrap up the show. So I'll toss it to Floyd for the headlines if he wants to go through and run through what we got left in news for AEW.
Yeah, the biggest news from Dynamite, the announcement that All Out, there's going to be an All Out week. Wednesday, September 1st, Friday, September 3rd, Sunday, September 5th. There will be Dynamite, Rampage, and All Out, respectively. And they'll be all in the same building, Sears Center Arena. And they're calling it All Out.
Now known the Now Arena.
Nope, not calling it that. It's the Sears Center.
But officially, it is the Now Arena.
Sears,
but it's official.
Sears Center Arena, sir. No.
I agree with you, but I'm just trying to make sure I say it right.
Okay, because
I'm going to protect Floyd and I'm going to protect this podcast because it's just someone's going to be like, I'm looking for Sears Center to get tickets, and then they're going to end up suing Floyd for false information. It's the Now Arena. Don't listen to the crazy man. He's diehard. I love him to death, but the Now Arena.
The greatest wrestling moments of my life were in the Sears Center Arena, and that's where I'm going back to Sears Center Arena. I don't care about their company, whatever their branding. It's the Sears Center Arena to me forever. But July 9th, those tickets going to sell. There is going to be combo tickets for all three shows. Yeah, I guess they're going to do, there might be like pre-sale codes or whatever, but look out for those. But the official sale date is July 9th. I can only say from the Hunger Games, I've got my three fingers in the air together. The odds be forever in your favor. Because even everybody's like, well, it's going to sell in 30 minutes. And then someone's like, oh, it's going to sell in, I'm going 8 minutes. And the reason I'm going 8 minutes is because they're actually, when they were Sears Center, they did their tickets themselves. They're actually running it through Ticketmaster, who can handle the traffic that the Sears Center couldn't handle. So I think for all the transactions to go through, the tickets will be sold out in 8 minutes. That's my prediction. I might be wrong. But no, I'm talking about All Out. The other two shows, you'll probably be able to get tickets to pretty easy. But first, third, fifth, I imagine the Fan Fest will be on the 4th. And hopefully they do mini sessions. And so there's a window there in the second. I believe me and JR talked, there's like 3 or 4 GCW shows that week. So if you're looking for a wrestling week to, that Chicago week will be great. And the second thing is MJF and Sammy G are certified draws. The most viewed quarter hour for AEW Dynamite was the end of the show from 9:45 to 10 Eastern, which was watched by 962,000 viewers total, 517,000 in the 18 to 49. And that was a .40 in the demo for that 15 minutes. 883,000 average viewers for the 2 hours of the show. So that was coming back to Wednesday after being away for like a month. So that is a strong number for being out of your time zone for time slot for that long. And last but not least, also on that July 9th, Dynamite Homecoming. They're going back to Jacksonville August 4th, 21, and they said that'll be the last time for a while. If I am to guess, barring any type of emergencies, I would say the next time they would be in Jacksonville after that is New Year's Evil, which is traditionally in Jacksonville. So, JR, what do you think about those announcements, that news? Anything shocking?
I can tell you this because I already it came up in my feed about 2 weeks ago. All Out 2019 sold out in 15 minutes. 15 minutes, All Out 2019 sold out. This is the first significant major AEW event since Revolution 2020 and this would be essentially the second biggest event that's like full capacity after SummerSlam that happened 2 weeks before. It's in the Midwest. Chicago is a great city for wrestling fans
and travel.
Chicago is very easy to travel to. As international, as the big airport.
Two of them.
If you plan on it, you better make sure you're locked in and dialed in to get your tickets because you will miss out if you're not dialed in. And then, of course, MJF, close to a million people watching his match, certified star. And I will say, I don't want to say I'm shocked, but it is good to see, though, that after over a month of being on Fridays and Saturdays, and their ratings were like 500,000, 600,000, to the first week back to get back up to almost 900,000. It shows that really shows the dedication of the audience that AEW has to that Wednesday night time slot. So that's good to see because I was a little worried that I was like, man, is the audience going to drop off? And It didn't. And they put on a great show, too. That show built from beginning to end.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that will wrap it up for this episode of All Things Elite. First off, big thank you to our friend JR for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have him on. JR, before we wrap it up, where can people once again find you and your Trick or Treat podcast on social media, and where can they find the podcast itself?
Yes, once again, it is a pleasure to always get a chance to talk to you, Austin, and of course, my brother Floyd. You can find me on Twitter at Lucha Professor. That is at Lucha Professor, as well as our podcast, a Trick or Treater podcast, review horror movies that drops every Friday on Stitcher, Spotify, Apple. This week, as we're recording on Thursday, July 1st, we drop every Friday. Friday, July 2nd, we're dropping our review of I Know What You Did Last Summer, starring Freddie Prinze Jr., Sarah Michelle Gellar, Jennifer Love Hewitt, Ryan Philippe. And our Twitter is at Trick or Treat Pod. That is at Trick or Treat Pod. And you can find our link tree to get our merchandise information and all of our areas to subscribe to our podcast. Thank you again for having me, guys. It's always a pleasure to get a chance to chat with you. Some good AEW wrestling.
Absolutely, man. Always great to have you on. Be sure to go and check out everything JR just listed right there for you. Support that, man. Once again, continue to download the show on Google or Apple Podcasts. Means the world. Leave ratings and reviews. If you listen to us on any other platform like Spotify or whatnot, just share us around with whoever you wish. It really means the world. Leave a donation through Red Circle if you're feeling generous. That would be great. We are at AT Elite Pod on Twitter. At Social Suplex is our podcasting network that make this show possible. Check out all their other podcasts as well. You're going to have some great listens. I am at SZoomer4 on Twitter. Floyd is at Floyd Johnson Jr. on Twitter. And I got to go to sleep because I got to wake up early to get on a train to go to Chicago for the 4th weekend. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to get to go to Chicago like 3 times this year because I have a concert. I'm going to go to All Out, no question about it. And I have this weekend. So I'm going to have a lot of fun in Chicago in 2021, that's for sure. Shout out Chi-Town. But I will let Floyd, my man, take us home for this episode of All Things Elite.
Well, hey, I just want to say before we go, thank you all to take some moment or time to listen to the show. I hope you are ready for us as AEW hits the road and you join on with us. I say this, be nice to JR, not JR to tell him, but Jim Ross, because he's Oklahoma's own, and I will fight you to the death to protect JR. But no, but I'm not kidding, but I am kidding. Whatever. I don't know how to say that. But just be nice to people. I'm throwing that out there. I say that every week as we head into the 4th of July weekend, Independence Day, Cody's Day, because he is America. I want you all to just show your appreciation to the people around you, your friends and family that are there through the everydays, through our ups and downs, through our mood swings, through our depression, anxiety, all of that. Your family, your friends, your people around you always there. Make sure you lean on them and take this weekend, which is a traditional family friends weekend, to let them know how much you care and how much you love them. And I will leave you with Happy Independence Day. I am a real American. And whether you are at home, work, or school, always do your best to be elite.